Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 117 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by Mr. Ayaz. Sumra Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. Yourself?
Very good, my friend, very good. So right, this show here again, there's not much on, so usually we'd start with the reviewing, we'd talk about the fights from last week. There wasn't much on. We're going to just skim through that really quickly. I'm going to start with a reviewing. I think there was only one fight or two fights just to mention last week. A little bit of an upset, I suppose, in many ways. Over in Denmark, Lalenga Mock, former opponent of David Haye. I remember he put David Haye down once upon a time. He's 45 years old. He's now, this was his 55th odd fight. He took on a guy who we all know quite well, Dmitry Chudanov. That's the brother of Fedor, that's it, yeah. He's the guy that obviously Groves beat, and this guy, Dmitry, that's the one that Chris Eubank Jr. beat. Well, anyway, he lost to a 45-year-old Lalenga Mock in Copenhagen. It was a unanimous decision over 10 rounds, so I think Dmitry Chudanov, I think really and truly that's the nail in his coffin, so to speak. I don't mean that he's not a solid fighter. What I mean by that is I don't think he's going to be any kind of future world champion. Definitely Fedor Chudanov is the more gifted of the two. Moving over now to one fight that happened over in Accra in Ghana. One guy to mention over here, Isaac Dogbo. He moved to 18-0. He also picked up the interim WBO World Super Bantamweight title against Cesar Juarez, who was 20-5. It's a fight I haven't seen. I've got to be completely honest. It's just one that I'm going to throw out there. It was a TKO in round 5. I know that Juarez was down in the second round as well. I've heard a lot about this Isaac Dogbo guy. I think that he's a guy that came over here. He was over here for quite a while. He couldn't seem to get any promoter interested in him. I think he's had many spars in various different gyms and always put a good account of himself in, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it was markability or something like that, he just wasn't able to crack it over here. So he's gone back to Ghana now, and he's really showing his class. So all the very best to Isaac Dogbo. I think he's one of those guys with that kind of little bit of a fairy tale background, so I'm always all for somebody doing well who's been through some hardship in their life coming up as a pro. Now that's it for the reviewing. So like I said, there's not too much really to go over. We're not going to sit here and discuss other things because we'd just be waffling on. And the last couple of weeks, I suppose we have done that in many ways. There's not too much to talk about. There's not too much juicy stuff to mention. What I will do is just mention one thing though before we welcome our very first guest, and that is we asked a question on Twitter, and the question that we asked is, we just asked, has anybody got any questions for the pod? Because of course there wasn't too much going on, and one of our favourite listeners, one of our main men from day one, I suppose you can say, at Ricey_SUFC, sends in a question here. Do you think Frank Warren being with BT Sports now, do you think that the promotional rivalry will cause more fights to not happen, mainly aimed at, of course, the Matchroom fighters, which, he's basically saying here, this link up with BT Sport, do you believe that the fights will be further apart from happening now between Matchroom and Frank Warren's stable? I'm going to come to you in a moment, Ayaz, for your opinion on this. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think that Matchroom was certainly leading the way in terms of putting on the better cards. I don't really want to say better in terms of 50-50 fights. I mean that their cards were definitely viewed by more casual fans. Box Nation's really a channel for hardcores. That's what I call it. So for me, I think they always had a bit of a smaller audience, Box Nation and Frank Warren. Now that they're with BT, obviously there's a lot more money in the jar, if you like, and the promotions and the productions are much bigger than what they were previously. However, it can go two ways. Sometimes, certain fights where there's one promoter doing better than the other, one promoter sometimes can be like, okay, I'll let my guy fight on your bill, he'll get more exposure. But then when that promoter, and I'm talking about Frank Warren here, when he comes into some money on a big deal like this, he now may have had a little bit of an inflatement to his ego. He might be saying, hang on a minute now, we've got a bigger audience than Sky have now. I'm not quite sure on the numbers, to be honest, but Frank Warren, I think at this stage, I like those fights because, of course, we all know that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren have got the best fighters in the UK, but, I mean, right now, there's a couple fights I'd like to see, but there's not so many. I'm enjoying what both guys are doing at the moment, but in answer to the actual question itself, I think it could go either way. It could be a fact where Frank Warren's now got a little bit too big for his boots, but saying that, the way I've always seen it, it always seems like Frank Warren's the guy that, you know, wants to really make the fights, you know, between himself and Eddie Hearn's fighters. It seems like he's always the one, especially when he comes across in interviews anyway. He always seems to be the guy that wants to really do those fights a little bit more than Eddie Hearn. You know, he seems like he's got much more desire to make those fights than Eddie Hearn has. However, saying that, Eddie Hearn's gone and, you know, let a few of his guys go and fight on Box Nation cards, on Frank Warren shows, and vice versa. But yeah, I think that Frank Warren's probably the guy that will be moving the goalposts a little bit more to make it happen than Eddie Hearn would be. That's just my opinion. Could be completely wrong. Ayaz, what's your thoughts on that? This link up, obviously, with BT, we're enjoying it so far. It's really working well for Frank, of course, and his wonderful stable of fighters. But does it make the big fights between himself and Eddie Hearn harder to make or easier to make? What's your opinion?
That's a very tough one. It's business at boxing. It goes back to business at the end of the day. Now, you look at Eddie Hearn's got Matchroom has got a deal with Sky Sports. Frank Warren's got a deal with BT and Box Nation. Now, if you look at, for example, Zolani Tete, he's the champion at bantamweight, right? Frank Warren's always stated that he wants Zolani Tete to fight Ryan Bennett, Anthony Yard to fight Frank Buglioni. Is business at the end of the day, is it really going to happen? I'm not too sure about that. I think it's a very, very difficult one, but at the end of the day, whatever it is, money, boxing is all about money, and if the right price comes, then it could happen.
Yeah, I think you've nailed that pretty much. You've said it in less words than me. So, well done, Ayaz. That really wraps up part one. Like I say, we're not going to rabbit on too much this week. We've got a very special guest coming up in just a second, so it's now time to welcome him. So that really wraps up the reviewing and the little discussion there. It's now time to welcome our very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated freeweight world champion, Mr. Mikey Garcia. Mikey, welcome to the show.
Hello, Joey. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Everything's great here, so pretty excited for the upcoming fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that in just a moment. So, Mikey, we last spoke just before your last fight, which, as we know, was against Adrien Broner. Some people believed that fight would be a close one. I told you a few times in the build-up that you'd absolutely dominate him. That's what I believed would happen, and that is basically what happened, in my opinion. Talk us through that fight just quickly, Mikey. How did you rate your performance?
Well, I think we had a very good performance. We had a very good game plan. Game plan was to be smart, fight a smart, intelligent fight. We knew he's a strong, big man, naturally bigger than me, so we can't rely on just power. We had to fight smart, work combinations, work on the body, work on combinations, and keep the punch volume high. And that's what we did for most of the night. And then in the last few rounds, we decided to box a little bit on the outside, let him come in, but I still kept the punch count high, and we were able to be very successful. We beat him with timing, with speed, and intelligence.
And I was going to ask you also, Broner seemed to come back in the later part of the fight. Did you tire a little bit? Did he adjust? Did you change your strategy because you were so far ahead? Why was he able to win some of those later rounds, Mikey?
I think it was like that after the 8th or 9th round that my brother and I, we felt that Broner would come out very strong, try to finish strong, try to change something because, we were winning the fight. He was desperate, so he was going to come a little more aggressive. So we decided to change a little bit of the game plan, a little bit of the strategy by boxing on the outside, but still keeping the punch count high. And even though he was coming in, trying to look and close the gap, I was always boxing combinations, keeping him at a distance where I'm still punching and he's still not landing that much. So it was just part of making adjustments. he was making adjustments himself. I had to make adjustments as well.
And the final question on that Broner fight, a lot of people talk about Broner's power, Mikey. What was his power like at 140?
Well, I definitely felt the size advantage that he had over me. He felt the weight. I did feel, that he had power because the times that he did exchange and I blocked some of those punches, you could just feel the heaviness of this punch. But at no point did he connect with anything that could have significantly, hurt me or anything like that. So I was able to be, smart about it and not get caught with anything like that.
Excellent. And just before we move on, I just want to let you know that we did like a thing a couple of weeks ago on this show. We was asking all the listeners what they thought was their favourite knockout of 2017. I just wanted to let you know that a lot of people went with your knockout earlier on in the year against Zlaticanin. So just wanted to let you know that the listeners liked that. Also, speaking of 140, as we know now, you're about to challenge for another world title. This one being the IBF Super-Lightweight world title. Should you win this title, Mikey, it will mean that you become a 4-weight world champion. However, the man that wants to put a stop to that wonderful achievement is the current champion, Sergey Lipinets. Sergey Lipinets is a solid fighter. He's an unbeaten fighter, but he's only just won the title. It's going to be his first defence here. Some people say that Lipinets isn't that good, but if you look at his record, it's clear to see, to me anyway, that he's beaten some good fighters. Maybe not big-name fighters, but he's knocked people out that big-name fighters went the distance with. So tell me, Mikey, what do you know about this guy?
Well, he's a new champion, of course, and to become champion in only his 13th fight tells you he's no slouch. He's no walk in the park. He's definitely talented. He's got power. He's got skills, or else he wouldn't be there. And from what I've seen, like I said, I know I'm fighting bigger men at 140 because I still don't feel that's a natural division, but I'm fighting at 140 this fight as well, and I gotta be smart. I gotta be careful not to get caught. Very similar to Adrien Broner, where I'm fighting the bigger man. But I think I have better speed and his timing and speed is not quite where Broner's was. So that will allow me to have more success and be able to land more combinations. I think it'll be a very good fight. I think it'll be a good fight because he's not gonna go down easy. He's not gonna relinquish that belt easy. He wants to keep that. He wants to beat me and take my place. So that's what makes it, an interesting fight and a good fight.
And having that fight against Broner, obviously at 140, do you think that did you a little bit of a favour trying out that weight against a solid fighter before challenging for a world title?
Yes, of course. And that's why we took on Adrien Broner at 140 because I wanted to get a good feel, from a top, world champion like Adrien Broner. Get a feel at 140, the size, the strength, the speed. And Adrien Broner honestly does have, great speed, great footwork. He does have good power. So that was a solid test for me at 140, and I feel comfortable enough competing at 140. And even though I still feel, like I said, lightweight is a more natural fit for me, but I feel, well enough to be fighting at 140 pounds.
And obviously there's nothing that I can tell you about boxing that you don't already know, so I know that you wouldn't overlook Lipinets here, but have you got any idea at this stage what would happen should you win this fight? Would you perhaps go back down to lightweight? Would you stay at 140, or do you not really know until the fight's over?
Well, I still have plans to coming down to 135 and unify the title with Jorge Linares. We just got news recently, from the WBC, that they are ordering me and Linares to fight each other, and I'm very, very comfortable with that. We actually were in talks a few months back with Golden Boy in regards to a potential fight with Linares, and I think that's a fight that everybody wants to see at lightweight. So we want to give them that fight. I think after this fight, if everything goes well, I'm definitely coming down to 35 for that fight.
Excellent, because that was going to be my next question. I was going to say, obviously, the WBC have ordered that fight. Does that kind of put any pressure on you? I know that they don't dictate what you do, but, does that put some added pressure that you've got to deliver that fight, or not really? Or is it just a fight?
Not really, anyway? Because it's the fight that we wanted. It's the fight that I wanted, and we were in discussions with Golden Boy a few months back, trying to secure a Linares fight. But even Golden Boy and myself agreed that, a fight like that should be on a grand stage and a premium, fight. And a fight like that in January would not make as much sense because people are coming after the holidays, and they might not be, able to spend the money for the tickets, and it might not be so well, and we may not do so well in tickets and sales, and it just doesn't create the purse that Linares and I both deserve. So we both opted to wait and take a fight in between, and maybe we get the fight, early in the summer. And now that the WBC is ordering it, well, that makes perfect sense for me, because we definitely want the fight with Linares.
And obviously, Mikey, people that know you know that you're a very humble guy. You tend to kind of fly under the radar a little bit in terms of your personality. You don't really get involved in any crazy stuff. But one thing you did say that was a little bit crazy for you was, you offered Miguel Cotto to fight at 154. Was that serious, or was that just a little bit of tongue-in-cheek? What was your views on that one?
No, we were serious. I definitely was serious. We sat with Golden Boy several times, and with people at Golden Boy, we were in discussions. I was very serious of moving up to 154 for Cotto. I won't do it for anybody else, honestly. It's not a division that I even feel I'm ready to be, competing with the other champions. But being that it was Miguel Cotto, the name, the weight that he holds, as far as the accomplishments and, future Hall of Famer, the opportunity to be in the ring with him was exciting enough for me to make that proposal. However, when Golden Boy, asked for a few options on me and a couple other fights, and I just didn't want to have any multiple fight agreements with Golden Boy. I wanted that one fight, and that's it. They wanted multiple fights, a total of 5 fights. I countered them with 3 fights. I asked them, give me 3 fights. Give me Cotto, give me Linares, and I'll give you guys one more. But they said they couldn't do that. They weren't able to do 3 fights. And that's what, caused the fight to not happen with Miguel. But I was willing to do it.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. A lot of boxers obviously want these big 4 or 5 fight deals, but when you're so good at a certain level, you don't really want to be tied into a 5 fight contract. It's a funny situation in boxing. Now, Mikey, if you win this fight, you'd have had 3 of the 4 major belts. You'd have had the WBO twice. You'd have had the WBC at lightweight, and now, if you win this, you get the IBF. So I just want to ask, when are you going to try and get the WBA? Maybe 147?
Well, I think the WBA would come with Linares. Linares holds the WBA at 135, so I might be able to pick up that one later this year.
And obviously, if you win this fight, you will become 38-0. And I know that you're very modest. I know that you're very humble. But, when you look at that, a 38-0 winning streak, that means you will be levelled, drawing in second place with Deontay Wilder out of all the current fighters that are active at the moment. There's a guy that I believe is a minimum weight world champion. He's 49-0, and I think, he's had loads of fights against people that we don't really know. Mm-hmm. But to be 38-0, Mikey, do you ever I know you're very humble, but do you ever look in the mirror and say, man, I'm a good fighter. I'm a beast?
I don't really look at the number of wins and records, and I'm not chasing any record either. So that's not something that stands out for me. I think the important thing is just the fighters that you're fighting against, the champions you're fighting, the titles you're winning. I think that's more of the record. I could rack up multiple wins against good decent challengers, but that's not what I want. I want to fight champions. I want to take titles away from champions. I don't really want to get a vacant title. I want to take a title from a champion, and that's what I'm after. And 38 is great. 39 might be better, and 40, 45, and no might be great. But I don't want to be just winning fights just to pile up wins. I want to win fights that mean something, that are championship fights, that are fights that the fans can really appreciate.
And it's good to do both at the same time, though, Mikey, isn't it?
Of course.
Coming down to the last couple questions, I just want to mention this. There's a guy right now at 140 from the UK. He's really making a lot of noise over here. Have you heard of a guy called Josh Taylor at all, Mikey? It's fine if you haven't.
Not really. Sorry, but I haven't really heard.
Basically, he just became the first man to stop Miguel Vasquez. And I think he's only had about 11 fights.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think he's only had about
okay.
11, 12 fights. So look out for Josh Taylor at 140. And finally, Mikey, Josh Taylor. Yeah, he's a big southpaw. He's a big southpaw. Finally, Mikey, I always give you the chance to send a lovely message to your UK fans, so I'm going to do it once again. What's your message to the listeners over here, the fans that you've got?
Well, just really appreciate all the love and support. I told you guys I'd be back. Now that I am back, I'm delivering great fights. Make sure you guys watch, February the 10th, because it's going to be another night of boxing. And I hope to come out there soon. I hope to come out there and maybe give you guys a fight out there. You just mentioned Josh Taylor. Maybe we come down there and do something with him. So stay excited for something like that.
Okay, listen, Mikey, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. You know that. Thank you for your time today. Best of luck for February the 10th, and we'll catch up sometime after.
Well, thank you very much, Joey. Thanks.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part is usually the preview part. There's one fight to go over, I think, in all honesty. Just one fight is happening. It's going to be happening tomorrow night. It's now Thursday, which is Thursday the 11th of Jan. Just looking at the date. By the time you listen to this, the fight may have already happened. But anyway, Friday, tomorrow night at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino in Verona, New York, USA. It's going to be shown on Showtime, and on this very bill, Clarissa Shields, she defends her IBF and WBC world female super middleweight titles against Tori Nelson, who is, one of the bigger names, I suppose, in the female side of boxing. She's 17-0 with 3 draws. It's going to be a 10 2-minute round contest there. Obviously, Clarissa Shields at the moment is absolutely running really through this boxing game, and nobody seems to be able to keep up with her at her weight class yet. So yeah, I think she's a fantastic fighter. She really is. Only losing one fight in her whole life, amateur and pro. I mean, and to pick up the belts that she has done so quickly, she certainly is a credit to the sport. She's arguably the biggest name in the female side of boxing, out of all the current boxers, of course. So credit to Showtime, especially for televising this event here. Just before we move on, we will talk about the latest news, Ayaz. I know that's your part, of course, doing the news. There's been many fights that have actually came to fruition this week. Obviously, there were many rumours floating around, but we've actually had some really big announcements. So take it away, Ayaz. What have we got? News
has just come in now. WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder has been sentenced to 60 hours of community service for marijuana possession.
Wow, I don't think that's the first time he's been caught with something, or did he previously get caught with something like a gun in his car or something like that? I don't really know what he gets up to outside the ring, Deontay Wilder. I think he's a guy that really keeps himself to himself most of the time, especially, off camera and stuff like that. But, he's a likeable guy, and, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, I don't know how they look at this thing, over in the US, and obviously it's not as serious as a drug of cocaine and stuff like that, but obviously the heavyweight world champion shouldn't be doing those things, as he's supposed to live his life like a role model. People look up to him, people want to be a heavyweight world champion when they grow up, and yeah, he shouldn't really be doing those things. So a little bit silly on his part, but unfortunately he's made a couple of these mistakes before. But yeah, he's a brilliant fighter, and hopefully his fight, I think it's now been finalised. I'm not 100% sure, but we do want to see him in the ring, obviously without those kind of substances in his system.
The big news is Amir Khan has signed a free fight deal with Matchroom Boxing and will feature on the Echo Arena at Liverpool on April 21st.
Yeah, I mean, it would come as a big shock. There was news floating around that Amir Khan would be signing a fight with Adrien Broner. We all thought that would happen. Then there was rumours about him signing with Matchroom. You was actually the first person to tell me that, Ayaz. When I first heard it, I thought, nah, it's just a rumour. There's no way he's going to sign with Matchroom. Obviously, he's got a bit of previous with Eddie Hearn, Kell Brook's there as well. Amir Khan's such a big star on his own anyway, without the boost from I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I didn't really think that he'd need to sign with a promoter and start giving away percentages of his purse and stuff like that to a promoter. So I'm a little bit surprised by that. I mean, Amir Khan does a lot of charitable work and stuff like that, and I really credit him. He's a really nice guy outside the ring, and I say inside the ring. You can't really be a nice guy inside the ring, but yeah, and he's a good guy, and when he actually says, I want to fight in the UK for the fans, you have to kind of half believe him, because he really went away and made a name for himself in a different continent. He had all those big fights in Las Vegas, and, he's definitely one of our definitely one of our flagship British boxers in the last, probably the last 20 years or something, really. I mean, I'm not saying that he's beaten all these fantastic fighters, but his resume, and I've said it many, many times, he's got the best resume of any current fighter, probably in the world. I mean, if you take out Floyd Mayweather, maybe Manny Pacquiao, he's arguably got the best resume. I'm not saying he's beat these guys in devastating fashion, but he has fought world champion after world champion, legend after legend, and Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer, let's be honest. So, yeah, credit to Amir Khan. I do want to see him back over here. I know that Liverpool's a very hard sell, so I can't quite understand the logic behind that. He's obviously going to be, headlining that bill. He is a pay-per-view fighter, and it's not going to be on pay-per-view, I don't think. So I'm interested to see what opponent they're going to bring in, and I just don't really know why it's happening in Liverpool. It doesn't make much sense to me, but the whole thing's come as a bit of a shock, but I'm happy, because, like I say, I do want to see him active, and it's a free fight deal, was it, Ayaz? Did you say?
That's correct.
Yeah, free fight deal. So there's going to be, a few fights involved in this contract. So no, it will be good. It will be good. I'm really excited for it. I just want to see him in there with some decent level guys. And let me jump in, Ayaz, with one little thing here. And I just quickly want you to quickly get up BoxRec while I'm saying this, because I want to ask you who you believe his next opponent should be in a realistic world, obviously coming back at 147. So I asked this question on Twitter. I basically said, who should Khan come back against? In a realistic world, and, nothing far-fetched, but obviously coming off of a knockout loss, coming off of a huge layoff now, who do you reckon he should fight? And there was a few replies that were sent in that were, decent replies, a few names of people that are coming up, a few guys, saying Danny Garcia. I don't think that fight really would be a smart move to come back into, and there's a few guys. I'm going to look at the list as well as at 147. Like I say, we've had a few come in. If you've pulled up the list already, is there anyone that you believe he should share a ring with in his return fight, obviously in a realistic world?
Yes, I do, actually. Like I said to you before, I want him to fight Broner. Obviously, Broner's coming off a loss against Mikey Garcia. He hasn't fought since July. I personally think that would be. I think Khan should fight him. First of all, it makes sense for both fighters, because the thing is, now it's a make or break fight for Broner if he's actually serious in fighting, and for Khan it'll be a good fight for him. So I reckon the Broner fight will be the best one for him, in my opinion.
I mean, I like that fight, and the reason why I liked that fight is because I pretty much almost. I mean, I was telling people, yeah, it's definitely going to get announced tomorrow, and it really wasn't. So, I've been teased by that a little bit. So maybe it's a little bit the same with you, where you've got a bit of a high expectance now. I saw an interview with Eddie Hearn this week, and he was saying that they're looking at people like Josecito Lopez. That's who he said, and that's obviously not a big well-known name over here. But looking at the fighters here, I mean, I'm looking at like the top 10, top 15 type guys, and I mean, I don't know, there's not many big names really that you chuck him in there with and it'd be a smart move, because all the top guys, obviously you've got Crawford there, you've got Keith Thurman, you've got Jeff Horn, Manny Pacquiao, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Lamont Peterson. They're all a little bit dangerous to come back to those guys with that layoff and coming off of a knockout loss, like I said. But I see a guy here on BoxRec ranked 9th, former world champion Jesse Vargas, Ayaz, and that is a name that I would not mind. I think that's a good fight. I think it's a safe fight, and I wouldn't blame him for taking on somebody like that. Obviously, a former world champion, Jesse Vargas, lately has kind of been a little bit in the shadows since losing to Manny Pacquiao, and obviously Tim Bradley a couple fights before that, but he has got that one win over Saddam Ali, which really we overlooked at the time, but has proved to be quite a good win. I quite like that fight. He's coming off of a win he fought in December just gone, so obviously it's going to be a bit too soon just looking at that. But I think Jesse Vargas would be a quite decent level of opponent, Ayaz. Do you agree with that? That
actually came to my mind like a minute ago. Before you announced that, right? Before you said that, I actually thought, yes, Jesse Vargas would be a good fight, because he's recently had a 12-month. The last time we saw Jesse Vargas fight before he fought beat Herrera. Is it Herrera? Herrera?
And Herrera plays for Man United.
What's this
Aaron
name?
Herrera.
Aaron Herrera. Sorry, that's it. Yeah. So the last time we saw Jesse Vargas fight before Herrera.
Aaron Herrera.
Before Jesse Vargas fought Aaron Herrera, he last fought Manny Pacquiao, and that was 12 months before. So for me, I personally, Vargas came to my mind. I'll still go with Broner. I think he should fight Broner. They're both coming off losses and a very long time ring rust.
Well, yeah. I mean, we spoke to just a few moments ago the man that Broner fought in his last fight where he lost, but it hasn't been such a long layoff. Obviously, Khan's been out the ring now for over 18 months, and by the time the fight rolls round, it will be a couple months shy of 2 years. I tell you who I believe they might fight, Ayaz. I really am serious with this. I would not be surprised if we see Khan fight somebody like Thomas Delorme. I know they've mentioned anyway. He's certainly up there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they fought somebody like, just having a look now, I saw it a minute ago and it's just left me. I'm trying to find him again. Antonio DeMarco. I would not be surprised if they made that. Antonio DeMarco's obviously a little bit of a name. Definitely had his best days behind him now, but he's a bit of a name. I wouldn't really be surprised if it was someone like that. There's a few other guys that are coming through. There's a Russian guy who's 32-0, but unfortunately no one's ever heard of him. There's that guy Jamal James who just fought. He just got a win over Diego Chavez. He's in the mix as well. There's another guy who's 13-0 here. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. He's from Uzbekistan. There's not really any big name fighters here, really. You've got Omar Figueroa. He's still undefeated. I don't think he'd come over for the money that they're going to offer somebody. I don't know, man. When you look at these fighters here after the top sort of 10, I think that they're all guys that are quite good but don't have the name, or guys that used to be good and aren't really that risky, but still I'd like to see him fight someone better. It's just boxing, isn't it? We always want more than what's on the table, if you like. But leaving that there, I'll let you carry on with the news.
Devin Alexander will face Victor Ortiz on February the 17th.
Yes, another former opponent of Amir Khan, obviously being Devin Alexander. Yeah, Devin Alexander just returned to the ring after quite a while out the ring. He came on this show. We spoke to him. It was a really good interview. Really nice guy, Devin is actually. So yeah, that's a fight I'm looking forward to. You'd have to kind of say that both guys are past their peaks, if you like. That sometimes can make for a really good time to make a fight. Victor Ortiz, to be honest, if he retired tomorrow, I really wouldn't be too bothered, to be honest. Devin Alexander, I do think, has got a couple of big fights left in him, maybe. So I hope he wins the fight. I certainly do, because if he loses to Ortiz, it's a really bad look. But it should be a good fight. Both guys are always in decent-ish fights. You never quite know what's going to happen with Ortiz. You really don't. He's always in mad fights. And Devin Alexander, I think this is this kind of opponent, the kind of style that Ortiz has got, could perhaps bring the best out of him. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But I can see probably a dominant points win for Devin Alexander.
Another announcement in the heavyweight division is that Donaire White will face Lucas Brown on March 24th.
Yeah, I texted Lucas about 2 or 3 days ago, and I just said, listen, what's happening with this fight? I really want it to get made, obviously. Where are we with it? And he said there should be an announcement within the next couple of days, and obviously that was what happened. Eddie Hearn announced the fight earlier today. It's a fight I'm really, really looking forward to. I think it's a much, much harder fight than some people are giving it credit for. Rocky Fielding quote tweeted it and said, I don't think that this fight is going to go the full 12 rounds. I agree with that to a certain extent. I think that Lucas Brown, I don't think he's got the best gas tank, really. I think he needs to kind of put it on White early. I think White hasn't really got the best gas tank either, and especially if Lucas Brown can set a fast pace early. So yeah, both guys, Lucas Brown I'd probably say is the harder puncher maybe out of the two. So yeah, it's going to be a good fight. That's all I'm saying. I feel a bit sorry for Lucas Brown. Obviously, his issues outside of the ring. If he is in fact innocent with all the allegations and stuff. Again, he's another guy that we had on the show talking all about that. Really good interview, and I'd like to see him do well in the fight, but I suppose who would you pick, Ayaz, at this stage? Actually,
I'll go with Dillian White. I think he's had the better opponent.
Yeah, he has definitely. But
I think Dillian White won this fight.
Well, all right then. I'll ask you this question then, Ayaz. I put you on the spot a little bit. Who is Dillian White's best win? Let's be honest. I mean, all right, he rocked Joshua, but he got knocked out. Apart from that fight, who else has he really beaten? I mean, Chisora is obviously the name that you're going to say, but that was a proper close fight. Some people gave that to Chisora.
I wouldn't go Chisora. I got Robert Helenius. I think he did all right in that fight.
Well, it was one of the most boring fights I've ever seen in my whole life. I mean, you know, Robert Helenius didn't come to fight, but I suppose it's a bit of a name. But even him, I mean, he's you know, his better days are way behind him. I don't know, man. It's a strange fight. I don't know. I've got a feeling it could be a bit of a stinker, really. But hopefully I'm wrong. But for me, I don't know. You know, I'm going to have a little look at the odds on that one when it gets closer to the time, because I quite find, I don't know. I'm a bit on the fence with that. I quite fancy Brown to do the job on him. You know, it's a hard fight. I don't know. I just can't see. I don't know, man. That's a hard fight. I need more time to think about that one. Sorry, Ayaz, for waffling on once again. Go on, carry on with the news.
Robert Davies Jr. will face Sorotka in a rematch.
Yeah, obviously Robbie Davies Jr. came up against the Polish international Sorotka in I'm not sure if it was his last fight or the one before that, but yeah, Robbie Davies is a nice guy. I think he was probably winning that fight. I think outboxing Sorotka, and then he ended up getting caught. Sorotka a bit of a puncher, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember his resume now. I remember we had Robbie Davies on the show just before that fight, and I knew everything about Sorotka at the time, but I've completely forgotten it now. You know, he didn't really need to go and have this rematch, to be honest. I think he's trying to prove a point here, and you've got to give him massive credit for trying to do that. He's got huge balls. Obviously, Robbie Davies Jr. losing his father recently as well outside of the ring. It hasn't really been a good time for him. You know, that was all surrounding that kind of fight as well. His father was ill for quite a long time, so I wish Robbie Davies Jr. all the very best. I hope he can beat this guy here and kind of put that little chapter to bed, if you like. But yeah, all credit to Robbie Davies Jr., Neil Marsh and the rest of the team on that one.
Okay, and finally, Carl Frampton will face 4-weight world champion Nonito Donaire on Saturday the 21st of April at SEC Arena in Belfast.
Yes, obviously, you know, Carl Frampton recently signing with Frank Warren, and you'd imagine he would be in line to face the winner of Selby and Warrington, but he takes on here Nonito Donaire, who obviously we cannot overlook at all. As you said there, as a 4-weight world champion. Nonito Donaire was on our 2016 Christmas podcast. We had him on the show probably for about half an hour to 45 minutes, a real in-depth interview with him from, you know, his amateur days all the way up until his recent fight. At the time, he's had a couple of fights since then. It's really hard with Donaire. I think he's had motivational issues, and he did say it to me that he just relied on his left hook to win him fights all the time, and you know, time's gone on since then. I think he's had a couple of wins, and like I say, it's hard to really gauge where he's at the moment. He's going to be travelling here, you know, probably the furthest he's travelled from, you know, from well, certainly for the last few years. I know he's now based in the US, but it'll be the longest he's travelled. He's had to travel in terms of distance for quite a while. Will he be motivated for that? Will he just kind of treat this as a bit of a cash out fight? You know, it's a huge name first and foremost, and credit to Frank Warren and the team and BT Sport for, you know, coming up with the money to get him over, because it's amazing stuff for Belfast. But it's a very hard fight to call, and I mean, if we're looking at Carl Frampton's last performance, he looked terrible, and I think Nonito Donaire could possibly stop him or beat him widely on points. But then again, was that just a really bad performance from Carl Frampton there? Or is he just slipping a little bit? You know, we don't quite know. Those fights with Leo Santa Cruz, did they take a bit of a toll on Carl Frampton? We're not quite sure. One thing that I will say, obviously we all know that Frampton picked his last opponent and his training team weren't too happy with it. Well, hopefully he hasn't picked Nonito Donaire, because that really could be a disaster. Stylistically, I mean, obviously Donaire's not he's not a natural featherweight. He's not a really big guy. Neither's Frampton. I think Frampton's problem is he seems to take on a lot of guys that are naturally bigger than him. Obviously, he's quite small for the weight, in my opinion, and I think that's where he can come unstuck a little bit. Somebody who's got the reach and the long jab and can move well gives him trouble, and that's what we saw with Leo Santa Cruz, and to some kind of extent, that's what we saw in his last fight. Nonito Donaire, I mean, like I say, the experience that man's got is just amazing. He really knows what he's doing, and it's a hard fight to pick. And to be honest, Ayaz, I'm going to side with Nonito Donaire to beat him. I really am. Well, how do you see that one?
Frampton Donaire, and you're going with Donaire. Oh, I'm going to go with Frampton. I think obviously Donaire's coming to the near end of his career, and I think Frampton, I think he's a new fighter, and I reckon Frampton will beat Donaire. I reckon Frampton will beat him on points and go on to win big fights. And but to be honest, this is actually a big fight. Donaire. 2 years ago, Scott Quigg wanted to fight Nonito Donaire. That fell through. Now Frampton's fighting him.
I'm just looking at Nonito's record now, and he's had one fight since we spoke in December of 2016, and that one was in September of 2017. So about 9 months after we spoke, he won a fight against Ruben Hernandez, and he basically dominated him, almost shut him out. He shut him out on one card and almost shut him out on the other two cards. It was for the WBC vacant silver featherweight title. The guy he beat, I suppose, wasn't really too much of a big name fight or anything like that. He lost the fight to Randy Caballero, the guy. He's only a young guy as well, looking at his record. I haven't really heard of him, to be honest, Ruben Hernandez. But anyways, you're right. I think that Nonito is coming down to the tail end of his career, but I don't know about Frampton, man. I mean, I know he had some stuff going on outside the ring in his last fight and stuff, but he was so... what's the word? He was so lackluster. He was so under-impressive that, for me, I just don't know. I don't know if we've seen the best of Carl Frampton already. I don't know. I think he's a tough guy, and I don't think Nonito's going to be able to stop him, but I can see a Nonito points win, to be honest. And, I mean, hopefully I'm wrong, but I believe that Nonito definitely has got the skills to beat Frampton. It's just a case of, can he roll back the clock a little bit? Not so much. He doesn't need to roll back the clock to 6-7 years ago when Nonito was pound for pound number 1 or 2. I think really he just needs to go back in time just 1 or 2, maybe 2-3 years. And I think that version of Nonito Donaire absolutely beats Frampton easy going on Frampton's current form. But like I say, it could have been because he picked that opponent. It could have been because he's got so much stuff going on outside the ring. So I'm going to give Frampton a little bit of a pass on his last fight there. At the end of the day, he got the win. But I don't know. I think Nonito Donaire, that's a hard fight. And I'm quite surprised because I really thought that the big fight at the end of it all was going to be Carl Frampton taking on the winner of Lee Selby and Josh Warrington. And then he'd face one of those guys for a world title. Arguably, they'd be easier fights, arguably. I'm not saying that's 100%, but some people would say Lee Selby's not as good as Nonito Donaire. Some people would say that Josh Warrington's not as good as Nonito Donaire. So he's having this fight with Nonito Donaire for no belt. So if he loses this, then I don't think the fight gets made with the winner of Warrington and Selby. And just for the record, I think Lee Selby is going to beat Warrington, and I think Lee Selby would beat Frampton as well. That's actually what I'm going on. But anyways, those fights are to be spoken and broken up about a little bit closer to the time when or if they get made. Is that it for the news, Ayaz?
Yes, that's it for the news.
Okay. There's one or two last little things to say. I put a tweet up on Twitter the other day just saying that obviously Amir Khan's now signed with Eddie Hearn, but he will be fighting at 147. Brook is about to make his debut at 154, the junior middleweight category, or also known as the super welterweight category, and obviously he's taking on Rabchenko. And I asked the people on Twitter, is the Brook versus Khan fight closer to happening than ever, or is it further from happening than ever? What I mean when I say that is Eddie Hearn, we saw him sign Luis Ortiz, and it seemed like he kind of signed him to keep him away from Joshua at the time. That's the way I saw it, okay? That was the way I saw it. And I think that only recently Eddie Hearn's kind of changed to, okay, we want to fight these guys, but all along, I don't think he really fancied the Ortiz fight. That's just my opinion. Again, I could be wrong. And I think that as much as the Khan-Brook fight would be such a great fight, let's have it right. The fight should have happened a long, long time ago. Whether it's Khan who don't want it or Brook who don't want it, I reckon it's Khan, and I don't know why. I really don't know why. But anyways, if Khan says to his promoter now, Eddie Hearn, look, I don't really fancy that fight, Eddie. That's it. Eddie Hearn's not going to come out and say, yeah, by the way, Khan don't fancy that fight. That's it. He's already come out before and said that, by the way. But he will not say that now. So I know what's happened here. Eddie Hearn has spoke to both guys and said, look, you're both with Matchroom now. The fight can be easily made. Do you want it? And one of them has definitely said yes. That'll be Brook, I believe. Even though from what I've heard, you know, Eddie Hearn talk about Brook, Brook's kind of been turning around saying, well, I've heard all this before. The fight's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. It seems like Brook's giving up on it. Amir Khan, he's talking about the fight again, and he always kind of talks about it, but he doesn't really get in deep detail on it. If Amir Khan doesn't want the fight will not happen. It's as simple as that, really. I hope it does happen, but I think that, it can go both ways. That's why I asked the question, just to see what people think. I reckon it can easily be made or it can easily be put off. We've had a reply from Ricey, again, avid listener of the show. He says that it will be done too late, just like Mayweather versus Pacquiao. They will try and build it up for money purposes, but the fighters won't be at their best. I completely agree. I think we've already reached that period. I think Amir Khan's over the hill. I think we all probably agree on that. You know, his days of beating the likes of Marcos Maidana are very much a long time ago now, a distant memory. Kell Brook, you know, lately when he takes punches under either eye, he's in big trouble and needs to be pulled out of the fight. So yeah, it's a shame the fight didn't happen years ago, and I think that really and truly the boat has kind of sailed for that one, really. I'd still like to see it happen just because I like both guys, and I'd love to see some kind of ending to that chapter. It all started when they were getting in each other's face on ringside all those years ago, and there hasn't really been any kind of final to it. Also, somebody, I shouldn't say somebody, another listener, another guy that tweeted in recently as well. I remember Nathan Moose. I think I'm saying that. You've got to correct me, Nathan, if you're listening. Nathan Moose. He sends in a tweet here. He said, I've give up on it. It's as simple as that. I've give up on it. And to be honest, I think many people have. Just before we wrap up the discussion here and bring in guest number 2, we've just had a tweet on Twitter come through right now. This one's from Ricey once again, a man that seems to be keeping the show alive this week. He sends in, because I've asked a tweet on Twitter saying, who should Amir Khan fight on April the 21st? Get your opinions in. Realistic, long layoff and coming off of a brutal knockout. Again, I said that there was a few sent in earlier. There's one sent in here, and he's lucky that he's sent in just in time as we're about to wrap up the show. He says Mohamed Mamoun. He beat Eggington, but don't think he would be good enough to beat Khan. Good warm-up for a bigger fight. What's your thoughts on that one, Ayaz? Mamoun against Khan. Obviously, Mamoun, I think he still holds that EBU title at 147 that he took away from Sam Eggington. To be honest, I think that's a very good fight, actually. But I still think, obviously, Khan's a bigger name. Obviously, we know Khan's speed and that. I reckon it'll be easy, nice and easy warm-up fight. I reckon Khan just stop him. Yeah, I mean, when you look down, I'm just looking at Mamoun's record now. When you look down his record again, he hasn't really got the names there. He's took a couple of guys' O's, but he hasn't really got the names there. I mean, you look at it, and to be honest, I don't really recognise anyone on there apart from... he's took on Alexandre Lepelle. I know him. I'm not quite sure why. And he took on, obviously, Sam Eggington, in which he... You know, the fight was close on the scorecards. Can't really remember watching... I mean, I definitely watched it, but I can't remember if it was close or not. But yeah, I think that's a good fight. Both men the same age. Obviously, Mamoun would be putting his EBU title on the line. But I've just seen that he's actually fighting in about 9 days' time. He's fighting a guy who's 21-0 called Emiliano Rodriguez. So maybe we will have to write that out there. It's going to be for the vacant IBO World Super-Lightweight title. So yeah, he fancies that, I'm sure, instead of Amir Khan. So all the very best to Mohamed Mamoun. Thanks once again, Ricey, for keeping the podcast alive once again. I'm sure you've done it a couple times before. Anyways, that really is it for all the talking we've done, the reviewing. We did the news, we did the previewing. There wasn't too much to talk about. We did the few little discussions that we've asked the listeners about on Twitter and helped us out with. It's now time to welcome, just before we wrap up the show, our second and final guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former WBO European, Intercontinental, English and IBO International Champion, Mr. Ben Jones. Ben, welcome to the show.
Say hello, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm very good.
Yeah, it's my pleasure getting you on, Ben. So we last spoke back in February 2016, almost 2 whole years. I'm going to ask you the first question here, Ben. Be honest here. Do you remember coming on before?
I do remember.
You must have a good memory.
Yeah, that is an honest truth. Yeah, I do remember. It wasn't that long. 2 years. I still remember that, yes.
Excellent. I'm pleased about that. I hope you're not just...
I don't get punched that hard, don't worry.
Now, I think at that time it was just before your fight against Amir Raphael. Now, you knocked him out in the first round, and I know that since then, things have been a little bit stop-start, really. You've had 3 fights since that one. A bizarre no contest in April 2016, a shutout points win in November 2016, and a split decision defeat most recently to Jason Cunningham for the Commonwealth title back in April 2017. Now, I'm sure that you'll agree that things haven't really been too perfect since we last spoke. However, they may all be about to change. But first, Ben, just talk me through those 3 fights there. I haven't seen any footage of the no contest fight. What happened there, mate?
The no contest fight, it's a real shame. The guy he's from Mexico, he's a puncher, so it was a nice one to sort of have on record. His record was good at the time. I went out on to the fight with great preparation. Everything was great, clearly, and winning very convincingly to a point that I thought we're going to get him out there. Sort of before the second half of the fight, and he'd come up with a car. They said it must have been a clash of heads and what have you. Annoyingly, they called it off about a minute before the end of the 4th round, I think it was, and it was classed as a no contest. So a real bummer. And he needed to go to that next round, and it would have gone points. And not always an ideal way to win, but it's better than a no contest,
Yeah, no, of course. And obviously that loss there to Jason Cunningham was obviously a really close fight. Did you believe that you edged it on the night, or did the right man win for you?
I'm telling you, I won that fight. It was a massive shock to me, that. I mean, don't get me wrong. He was a nice, tidy boxer, and he was good. He started well, which was great, as he did for Reece Bellotti. He started well, and then it was my fight. I took over. Don't get me wrong. I didn't win on points by loads and loads of rounds. My disappointment was I couldn't get him out of there. He was sharp enough to move, and he's a good little fighter, but he's. It's a shame, as I said, it was a split decision. The 2 judges that went for him were from his area. The judge that went for me was from London. There you go. Boxing's politics. One of them things, I'm afraid.
And obviously, getting on to your upcoming fight, you'll be taking on Reece Bellotti, like we just mentioned there. This one's for the vacant Commonwealth title on February the 3rd. One thing that you both have in common, as we both know, of course, is that your last opponent, each of you both took on the same man, as we said, Jason Cunningham.
That's right.
A fight that you lost on a split decision, which was quite controversial. Reece Bellotti knocked him out in the 6th round back in October at York Hall. A fantastic fight that I was ringside for, actually. Really good fight.
Yeah.
First things first, Ben, you've boxed, really, I was looking at your record, you've boxed in a random set of venues in and around London and other parts. This fight happening, obviously, arguably, at the best venue in London, the O2 Arena, is definitely going to be the biggest crowd you've boxed in front of. How excited are you for that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing for me. It's great for my fans and stuff as well. It'd be nice to come and do the business in a great stadium. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And the man in the other corner, Reece Bellotti, doing all the right things so far. Hasn't put a foot wrong. 11-0 with 10 knockouts.
No, you're right.
What do you know about him, Ben?
I know he's a great little fighter. He's obviously done very well on the stoppage side of things as well. He's fought quite a few people I fought as well. Jamie Spites and obviously Jason Cunningham. Yeah, I've watched him. I've watched him enough. I don't want to go overboard with it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. He's no mug. He's a good fighter. And the nice thing is, I'm coming into this fight as the underdog, which is great. I like that.
And I like to here and there pull a juicy fact out the bag, and I'm going to do it here. Reece Bellotti, like I say, 11-0, but only 3 of his opponents have had winning records. And funny enough, you fought 2 of them. Obviously, Jason Cunningham, which I hate to keep mentioning. You know, he went the distance with you. He stopped him. Yeah. But also, if you look a bit closer on the record, Jamie Spate, last year, right. Bellotti knocked him out in 8 rounds. You knocked him out when it was, to be honest, a much fresher version of Jamie Spate. You knocked him out in 6 rounds back in 2012. Is Reece Bellotti a tiny bit overrated in your opinion, Ben?
We'll see. That's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say he's overrated. He could be an amazing fighter. We'll talk afterwards on that. But I believe that he's going to have a very, very difficult fight, and he'll see a whole different game when it comes to fighting me. So there we go. That's what I think.
And I haven't really heard many people speaking about this fight, you know, in the mainstream of things on social media and stuff like that. But to me, this is clearly another step up for Reece Bellotti. It's going to be a really good fight. This is one I'm really looking forward to. There's a couple of fights on that bill that I really like. I mean, your one, I like the Ted Cheeseman fight against Carson Jones, and the main event as well. Just also, obviously, while you're fighting at featherweight, I just want to quickly touch on, you know, what you're making of the world scene. Your old foe, Lee Selby, still world champion. It's looking like he'll be fighting Josh Warrington next. Who wins that fight, and will the winner beat Frampton, in your opinion?
Ooh, that's difficult what you just said. The last bit. I believe that Lee Selby will be Josh Warrington. Lee Selby is a very awkward, long-sided fighter. And unless you've, in my eyes, got serious power and a great work rate, which Josh Warrington's got a great work rate, he's got to have the power as well. And I think it's a battle of wits that I believe that Lee Selby's there. That's my opinion. That's nothing against either of them. Cole Frampton, a foe of mine. I've sparred millions and millions of rounds with Cole. Great fighter. Great timing. Very, very talented fighter. His timing is one of the things you can look at him and look, you know, really carefully, but you don't realise how good his timing is. That'll be a cracking fight, him and Lee Selby, and I'm going to sit on the fence with that.
We'll let you do that. Also, Ben, is there any other upcoming fights that you want to give your opinion on? Any interest in the main event of your bill, Chamberlain and Okoli?
I think it's a cracking fight. That's one thing I will say. Like you've just said, like I said, the Ted Cheeseman one. What a cracking fight for him. That's a real good step up. And if you've got a good Carson Jones, which they've given plenty of notice, it's going to be tough. So both of them, I think they're cracking fights. And it's showing that because people are selling out the O2 for it, you know. So they're both cracking fights, and I believe my one the same, you know. Again, the mix of styles between me and Reece Bellotti is fantastic, you know. It's what they're going to, you know, 2 people that can both punch, and both people can box both ways. I've a box in the back foot, box going forward. So it's an interesting one on every move, I think. So it'll be a good boxing night, I believe.
And is there any other fights, like I say, that you want to give your opinion on? I know that one just got made today between Carl Frampton and Nonito Donaire. It's going to be happening in Belfast in a few weeks' time. What's your thoughts on that one, or any others?
To me, on that one, I think that's a very good move for Carl. I do. Donaire, fantastic, absolute brilliant champion over the years, many weights as well. Great fighter. I think if you ask me, Frampton can punch far too hard for him. And as I was talking about, the timing's there. The timing's good with him. And I do believe that Donaire's shame that he's coming to the later end of his career, where he was so fast and so quick. He slowed down, and he's going to take some of them big shots from Frampton. I think it's a little bit too much for him.
We certainly hope you're right on that one. And just before I let you go,
I think so.
Just before I let you go, Ben, anything that you want to say at all to anybody that may be listening? Anything at all? Take it away.
I'd like to say is come and support. Come to CO2. Get me on Twitter at Ben Jones Boxing. Come buy some tickets and enjoy the night. It's going to be a great night of boxing.
Absolutely, well said. All right, listen, Ben, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Best
you very
of luck
much.
for the third, and we'll catch up sometime
No,
after.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Just for the call as well. Thank you.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 117 of the BoxHard Podcast. A big thank you to our two guests, the truly sensational Mikey Garcia and the brutally and honest all-round good guy, Mr. Ben Jones. I was looking at our previous podcast, and this show means that we've had 4 current or former world champions in our last 4 shows. When other podcasts are taking breaks over the Christmas and New Year's period, we are not. And the reason for that is because we do not take breaks. We really do possess the podcast spirit. These other podcasts are not in the league of the BoxHard Podcast. To have a good podcast, you need to have the Warriors Code. We certainly have it. Thank you so much for listening once again, and we will see you next week.